The Lamb with the Golden Fleece. Although the first recorded literary appearance of the stick-fast tale is in the Indian Jataka tales, traditionally dating from over 2,000 years ago, it has only been traced in the Western writings to a 15th century English poem, The Tale of the Basin. To the American blacks goes the credit of carrying the oral version from Africa to the United States, where it may have arrived centuries before Joel Chandler Harris made it famous in The Wonderful Tar Baby Story in 1881. The tale is, in one form or another, known all over Europe and the Middle East. It was taken to Canada through French influence, and from there probably to 3 or 4 Eastern American Indian tribes. These Indians have supplied at least 23 variants of the tale. A. M. Espinoza, reviewing over 150 versions, has plotted the 3 main routes westwards, affording valuable information about the way in which stories are diffused. By the study of the content of the versions, he found that one route was India, Africa, America, a second was India, Europe, Iberia, America, and the third was India, Europe, American colonies. Although some scholars have believed that many tales are found so widely apart because of polygenesis, the stick-fast concept seems so very odd that it could be used as an argument against the polygenetic hypothesis. There was once a poor man who had a son, and as the son grew up, his father sent him out to look for work. The son travelled about looking for a place, and at last met with a man who arranged to take him as a shepherd. Next day his master gave him a flute, and sent him out with the sheep to see whether he was fit for his work. The lad never lay down all day, very unlike many lazy fellows. He drove his sheep from place to place, and played his flute all day long. There was among the sheep a lamb with golden fleece, which, whenever it heard the flute, began to dance. The lad became very fond of this lamb, and made up his mind not to ask any wages of his master, but only this little lamb. In the evening he returned home. His master waited at the gate, and when he saw the sheep all there and all well fed, he was very pleased, and began to bargain with the lad, who said he wished for nothing but the lamb with the golden fleece. The farmer was very fond of the lamb himself, and it was with great unwillingness he promised it. But he gave in afterwards when he saw what a good servant the lad made. The year passed away. The lad received the lamb for his wages, and set off home with it. As they journeyed, night set in just as he reached a village, so he went to a farmhouse to ask for a night's lodging. There was a daughter in the house who, when she saw the lamb with the golden fleece, determined to steal it. About midnight she arose, and lo, the minute she touched the lamb she stuck hard and fast to its fleece, so that when the lad got up he found her stuck to the lamb. He could not separate them, and as he could not leave his lamb, he took them both. As he passed the third door from the house where he had spent the night, he took out his flute and began to play. Then the lamb began to dance, and on its wool, the girl. Round a corner, a woman was putting bread into the oven. Looking up, she saw the lamb dancing, and on its wool, the girl. Seizing the baker's shovel in order to frighten the girl, she rushed out and shouted, "Get away home with you! Don't make such a fool of yourself!" As the woman continued dancing, the woman called out, "What, won't you obey?" and gave her a blow on her back with the shovel, which at once stuck to the girl, and the woman to the shovel, and the lamb carried them all off. As they went on, they came to the church. Here the lad began to play again. The lamb began to dance, and on the lamb's fleece the girl, and on the girl's back the shovel, and at the end of the shovel the woman. Just then the priest was coming out from matins, and seeing what was going on began to scold them, and bid them not to be so foolish and to go home. As words were no avail, he hit the woman a sound whack on her back with his cane, when, to his surprise, the cane stuck to the woman, and he to the end of his cane. With this nice company the lad went on, and towards dark reached the royal borough and took lodgings at the end of the town with an old woman. "What news is there?" said he. The old woman told him that they were in very great sorrow, for the king's daughter was very ill, and no physician could heal her. But if she could but be made to laugh, she would be better at once. No one had as yet been able to make her smile, and moreover the king had issued that very day a proclamation stating that whoever made her laugh should have her for his wife and share the royal power. The lad with the lamb could scarcely wait till daylight, so anxious was he to try his fortune. In the morning he presented himself to the king and stated his business, and was very graciously received. The daughter stood in the hall at the front of the house. The lad then began to play the flute, the lamb to dance, on the lamb's fleece the girl, on the girl's back the shovel, at the end of the shovel the woman, on the woman's back the cane, and at the end of the cane the priest. When the princess saw this sight, she burst out laughing, which made the lamb so glad that it shook everything off its back, and the lamb, the girl, the woman, and the priest each danced by themselves for joy. The king married his daughter to the shepherd, the priest was made court chaplain, the woman court bakeress, and the girl lady-in-waiting to the princess. The wedding lasted from one Monday to the other Tuesday, and the whole land was in great joy, and if the strings of the fiddle hadn't broken, they would have been dancing yet. The Man with the Wen. In Europe, this tale is known as The Presence of the Little Folk, as collected by the brothers Grimm in Germany, and it most usually features two hunchbacks. It is quite widely distributed in France and Italy, and Turkish and other versions are also known. The following presentation is interesting because it is found in a collection of tales of Japan dated 1664, and believed to date from a much earlier time there. The behavior of the goblins, with their piping and dancing and tricks, seems very close to that of the Irish little folk. Indeed, a similar fiction is found in Ireland, where it is known as the legend of Knockgrafton. Supporters of the migration theory have suggested that it dates from times when a Turanian tribe occupied Ireland, even before the Celts, though such a supposition is not essential to explain its diffusion. Once, long ago, in old Japan, there was a man who spent his days trudging up and down the mountains collecting wood. This he used to burn and to make charcoal, for he was unable to make a living in any other way. This unfortunate fellow thought that the gods were in some way displeased with him, for he had on his left cheek a large and disfiguring swelling, what people call a wen. He had gone to many doctors, but whatever treatment they had prescribed had never been of any use. In fact, whatever medicine he tried, the wen grew larger and larger day by day. He was so distressed at his appearance that he shunned other people, and gradually became more and more miserable. His wife tried to be cheerful about the matter, and pretended to be unaware of it, the wen and the depression into which her husband was falling. However, in the end it made her hate him. Their life as charcoal burners was not one of much happiness, and for all the wood he could gather there seemed to be very little financial gain. The poor woman was seriously thinking of running away back to her own village and leaving him and his monstrous wen forever. One day, With an uncomfortable bundle of wood on his back in an osier basket, the charcoal burner went slowly up the mountain track, fingering his wen with exploring fingers, positive that it was larger than the day before. Suddenly the thunder rolled, the lightning flashed, and heavy, slanting rain began to fall. "Oh, merciful heaven," he cried, "so far from home and so little wood, and now this downpour! Where can I shelter?" Stumbling and falling, half blinded, he was at the end of his strength, when his hands touched the bark of a hollow tree. Gratefully he eased the basket off his thin shoulders and covered the top with his wide hat. He saw that there was enough space for him to creep into the hollow of the ancient tree trunk. There was scarcely a drop of rain on his head and shoulders as he crouched there, and he pulled his thin coat around him, removing his sandals to rest his aching feet. The thunder rolled, and it seemed as if the world was about to crack into millions of pieces. But as quickly as it had begun, the storm ceased. The charcoal burner fingered his wen, and was just about to creep out of the tree when he heard the tramp of feet. The rays of the setting sun played on a group of people who came marching along the mountain path, lighting them with a crimson glow. "Whoever can they be?" wondered the man, quickly retrieving his sandals and slipping his feet into them. He still remained inside the tree hollow, for the sound of wild piping came to his ears. With staring eyes he gazed at a multitude of creatures. They were the strangest he had ever seen in his life. There must have been about 100 of them, a troop of what he now realized were some sort of enchanted beings. They were all of strange shapes. Some were tall, covered with creepers, hung with curious beads. Others were small and shrunken like skeletons with phosphorus eyes, dancing disjointedly, yet with a gay abandon. Some had the mouths of crocodiles, snapping like castanets, keeping in time to the sound of drums almost martial in their rhythms. There were elves with one eye in the middle of their foreheads, dwarves with tremendous feet, all stamping and leaping along the mountain path in perfect time with the shrill piping and drumming. There were pale witches with long black hair, and huge dark giants dressed in bearskins. Those who did not have musical instruments had magic wands in their hands or claws or paws, but each was leaping and pirouetting in joy and excitement. Some had 2 horns, some had only 1, but each contributed noisily to the general merriment and air of carnival. Not daring to show himself, the frightened charcoal burner peeped through a knothole and held his breath. They came to a stop just near his hiding place, and the stamping and music grew louder. They made a large circle, ambling or hopping round and round, with one of their number in the middle, the head demon evidently, jumping as high as the others' heads in a series of extraordinary leaps. They lit a huge bonfire, and holding up torches which they ignited there, shouted and sang at the top of their voices. The firelight gleamed on furry legs, shining tusks, or flashing eyes. As he watched and heard the music, the charcoal burner became as gay as they. Forgotten was his wen and his predicament. He leaped into the firelight, and his feet carried him round in a most lively dance. His wen bobbed about, but he did not even try to cover it as usual with one hand. His arms were flung into the air, and he danced crazily, willing and fey, with all the others enjoying themselves around the fire. "Well done! Excellent timing!" shouted the head demon. "Keep it up, human being. We are much entertained." Each demon roared or screeched encouragement. The man danced like one whose very life depended on his feet not touching the ground for more than a split second. The lesser demons piled more wood on the flames, others carried torches round and round. The laughter and screeching grew in intensity, and so did the intricate dancing of all present. The charcoal burner managed to hold his own in that mighty throng. He laughed as he had not done since the night of his wedding so many years ago, when he felt himself to be the happiest and most favoured man of the village where he was born. At last, completely worn out, he came to a sudden stop, and felt terribly thirsty. As if he had read the charcoal burner's mind, the head demon handed him a bowl of wine. The flavour was amazingly good, and it slipped down his throat like a priceless elixir. He felt as good as ever within a few seconds of having drunk, and felt the gleaming eyes of the head demon upon him. "You have danced well," said the demon with sincerity. "We have been immensely privileged to have you in our little company. Never have we seen a human who could keep up with our ideas of revelry, let alone surpass us." No, said the charcoal burner politely. "It was most remarkably good of you to allow my faltering steps to—" "Faltering steps! You are a master of the dance!" roared the demon, pressing the wine bowl upon the man once more. "I speak for all of my people when I say we have tonight, in fact, learnt much in the way of steps from you. You must come tomorrow night and teach us more." Very flattered by the important demon's attentions, the human being could scarcely believe his ears. "Tomorrow night? Oh, noble entity! I would like nothing better in this world. Just let me recover my strength, and I will with all my heart attend your revels here, for I am most amazed by your frivolity," he answered gallantly. "Just a moment, though," said the head demon, as his minions refilled his wine bowl and lavished every attention on him. "Human beings sometimes find life so demanding that they forget our invitations. Let us see what sort of a pledge you can leave with us so that we can be sure that you will come back." A few of the demons held a consultation, and when they had made a decision, they came to the head demon and said, "Lord Demon, we have democratically decided that, as some humans consider a wen to be a very fortunate thing to have, we will ask the man to leave that as a sign of his good faith." "Done," said the head demon. "With your permission, good sir, of course, just a small prick." The charcoal burner's finger went up to his cheek in his usual gesture of dismay. He felt a minute twinge as if a gnat had stung him, and at that moment the entire devilish company vanished. And with them, his wen had also disappeared. He could not believe his good fortune. The moon was now up, all signs of the fire the demons had lit and danced around had gone. He slipped his osier basket onto his back, loaded with the wood he had collected, and made his way home with his mind in a turmoil. His wife was delighted to see him, without the monstrous wen. Her heart was uplifted, and she decided not to run away after all. Life would now be much better with the hideous lump removed from her husband's face. He told her everything from start to finish, and her eyes were like a fawn's in the lamplight. All the love she had had for him on their wedding day returned. But more was to come. In the bottom of his osier basket, when the wood was all taken out and stacked in the hut, were 100 pieces of finest silver money. "Husband! Husband! You will never have to work again collecting wood. We can enter some other nice clean business. Let us give thanks to the gods for what they have caused to happen tonight," cried the woman in the height of excitement. Now, next morning, the tale was told all round the charcoal burner's circle of friends. One neighbour, a baker, said, "Oh, dear brother, let me go in your place, please, so that I could have this wen removed from my cheek, for it has plagued me greatly since it appeared a few months ago. If only I could go and meet those demons, the dancing would be quite easy to do, I'm sure, and I certainly could do with 100 pieces of finest silver to get myself a new oven." His wife added her screams and tears to his request. So the kindly charcoal burner told the baker where to go, and the neighbour set off gaily up the mountain track. He reached the hollow tree and settled down for a long wait, eating some salted fish and bread while he looked forward to the devilish train's arrival. He had a large osier basket with him, in which he hoped to take his silver home. No sooner had the sun disappeared than he heard the tramp of the approaching throng. Pipes, flutes, and drums grew louder and louder. Singing and shouting, the demons came, as before, into the clearing. Their heads tossed, their eyes and teeth gleamed in the starlight. The festivities began, the fire was lit, and the demons started dancing. Soon the whole mountainside was reverberating with sound. "Has the man not come as he promised he would?" some of the demons began to ask each other. "Here I am, just as I agreed," shouted the baker, running towards them. He took out his fan, and covering his wen, began to dance and sing as hard as he possibly could. But his feet were not as nimble as that of the charcoal burner, and he had no natural rhythm at all. He just seemed to shuffle and hop, with no more grace than a goat. The demons looked on with distaste, and several gave him the thumbs down sign. The head demon snarled with rage as the man cavorted clumsily round the fire. "Your feet are like lead, nothing like last night's performance," he roared, and the others screeched insults, spitting at the baker like wildcats. "This won't do. We are not at all amused by this behaviour. Where is your heart tonight? Here, take your pledge and go. Leave us this instant." Thunder rolled, lightning flashed, rain fell. The roaring and offensive remarks hurled at him so terrified the baker that he ran for his life, a wen on either cheek. The Skillful Brothers. This story has wandered across the world, perhaps from the Kalmucks to Norway, and it is as well known in Japan as it was to the Brothers Grimm. The details vary from place to place, for the chivalric chase is variously aided by magical horses, telescopes, medical skill, military prowess, knowledge of everything in the world, or the power to run faster than thought. In Iceland, the girl is sick. In Arabia, a magic carpet is called into play. In Grimm, a tailor is one of the heroes. His skill is such that he can even sew eggs together. In the version of the Tales of a Parrot, set in Afghanistan, a dispute about the girl arises between the heroes which may continue to this day. And in the Mongolian version, the youths kill one another when they realize how beautiful the princess is. In the Arabian telling, the lady's problem is that she is ill with a mysterious disease. In Germany and Japan, her captor is a dragon. In India, a demon. In the Mongolian, a wicked Khan has stolen her. In the ancient Indian version, there is only one hero. In one Persian variety and the Arabic, 3. Grimm and another Persian recension have 4 brothers, the Kalmucks prefer 6, and the Albanians opt for 7. The 47th tale of the Italian Basile's Pentamerone is very close to the Arabic, yet the Italian version was known in Europe long before the modern translations of the Arabian Nights were published. This is the Albanian telling. Once upon a time, there was a king who had a beautiful daughter. They lived happily until, one day, the devil took it into his head to carry her away. This he did, conveying her to his dwelling place, deep in the earth, where human beings cannot normally reach. The king was distraught beyond measure, and he announced that whoever should save the girl could have her hand in marriage, provided that she agreed to accept him. 7 intelligent, noble, and skillful youths each volunteered to rescue the princess, and they set out together to seek the hiding place. Now these brothers were well equipped for their task. The first had such acute hearing that he could hear any sound, even from the most remote distances. The second had the power of making the very earth open to any depth. The third could steal anything from anyone without their knowing it. The fourth could hurl any object to the very confines of the world. The fifth was able to build a lofty and impregnable castle in an instant. The sixth was such a marksman that he could hit anything, no matter how high in the air it was, or how distant. The seventh could catch, and safely hold, anything which fell from the sky, whatever the altitude. The seven had not gone very far when the youth with the acute hearing put his ear to the ground and heard that under that very spot was the devil's hideout. He said to the second young man, "Cause the earth to open at this point." Instantly, by the second youth's magical power, the earth opened, and the party descended into the ground where they saw the devil, deeply asleep and snoring, clutching the maiden to him. The third youth stole the princess from the diabolical grasp by his power to abstract anything from anywhere without it being known. In her place, he put a toad. The fourth companion took off one of the devil's unique shoes and hurled it so far that it descended at the other end of the earth. Carrying the princess, the brothers started their journey back to her father's palace. Very soon, however, the devil awoke. He roared and screamed with fury when he found the toad, the princess gone, and his irreplaceable shoe missing. He threw himself into the air and sped to the end of the world to recover the footgear, and then started off in hot pursuit of the travellers. As soon as they saw him coming in the distance, the fifth young man caused by his art a mighty and almost inaccessible tower to be built. The 8 fugitives went inside, and the door closed, just at the moment when the devil arrived. Try as he might, the fiend could not get into the tower. Resorting to guile, he said, "I will go away in peace, if you will only let me have one final look at the princess." Foolishly, as it turned out, they made a very small hole in the tower for him to peep in, and in less time than it takes to tell, he had pulled the girl through this aperture, and was flying away with her through the air towards his foul abode. Now the sixth young man, taking his magical bow, sped an arrow towards the devil, hitting him so hard and true that he dropped the princess from an immense height. The seventh youth was ready, and he caught her before she hit the ground. Soon they reached the place in safety, and the king was overjoyed at the return of his daughter. "Which of the brothers will you choose?" he asked her. "Each one of them has done something indispensable to rescue me," said the princess. "Yet I think that I will choose the one who caught me when I fell." This seventh youth was, as it happens, the youngest and the most handsome, so they were married. And the king rewarded all the other young men with lavish presents and grants of land, and they all lived happily ever afterwards. The Algonquin Cinderella. At the end of the 19th century, Mrs. M. R. Cox collected 300 years of Cinderella-type stories. They totaled 345 versions, and she added that they could be multiplied. This may be one of the most enduring of all tales. A variety has been noted by Arthur Waley in a Chinese book of the 9th century AD. My father published a Vietnamese variant claimed to be thousands of years old in 1960. It has also been observed that the story of Aslaug, daughter of Siegfried and Brunhilde, in the Volsung saga is a striking parallel. Apart from the now popular version of Perrault, published in the 18th century, there are other intriguing and excellent tales featuring the pathetic cinders. Of these, the Scottish variant is Rashinkoti, coat of rushes, and there is an English one, cap o' rushes. People have argued about the slipper, should it have been glass or fur. Children love the details of the ball, the magic pumpkin, the wicked stepmother, and why should they not? But for sheer beauty and delight, this American version, found among the Algonquin Indians, seems hard to beat. There was once a large village of the Micmac Indians of the eastern Algonquins, built beside a lake. At the far end of the settlement stood a lodge, and in it lived a being who was always invisible. He had a sister who looked after him, and everyone knew that any girl who could see him might marry him. For that reason there were very few girls who did not try, but it was very long before anyone succeeded. This is the way in which the test of sight was carried out. At evening time, when the invisible one was due to be returning home, his sister would walk with any girl who might come down to the lake shore. She, of course, could see her brother, since he was always visible to her. As soon as she saw him, she would say to the girls, "Do you see my brother?" "Yes," they would generally reply, though some of them did say, "No." To those who said that they could indeed see him, the sister would say, "Of what is his shoulder strap made?" Some people say that she would enquire, "What is his moose runner's haul?" or "With what does he draw his sled?" And they would answer, "A strap of rawhide," or "A green flexible branch," or something of that kind. Then she, knowing that they had not told the truth, would say, "Very well, let us return to the wigwam." When they had gone in, she would tell them not to sit in a certain place, because it belonged to the invisible one. Then after they had helped to cook the supper, they would wait with great curiosity to see him eat. They could be sure that he was a real person, for when he took off his moccasins they became visible, and his sister hung them up. But beyond this they saw nothing of him, not even when they stayed in the place all the night, as many of them did. Now there lived in the village an old man who was a widower and his 3 daughters. The youngest girl was very small, weak, and often ill, and yet her sisters, especially the elder, treated her cruelly. The second daughter was kinder and sometimes took her side, but the wicked sister would burn her hands and feet with hot cinders, and she was covered with scars from this treatment. She was so marked that people called her Ujigiasku, the rough-faced girl. When her father came home and asked why she had such burns, the bad sister would at once say that it was her own fault, for she had disobeyed orders and gone near the fire and fallen into it. These 2 elder sisters decided one day to try their luck at seeing the invisible one. So they dressed themselves in their finest clothes and tried to look their prettiest. They found the invisible one's sister and took the usual walk by the water. When he came, and when they were asked if they could see him, they answered, "Of course." And when asked about the shoulder strap or sled cord, they answered, "A piece of rawhide." But of course they were lying like the others, and they got nothing for their pains. The next afternoon, when the father returned home, he brought with him many of the pretty little shells from which wampum was made, and they set to work to string them. That day, poor little Ujigiasku, who had always gone barefoot, got a pair of her father's moccasins, old ones, and put them into the water to soften them so that she could wear them. Then she begged her sisters for a few wampum shells. The elder called her a little pest, but the younger one gave her some. Now with no other clothes than her usual rags, the poor little thing went into the woods and got herself some sheets of birch bark, from which she made a dress, and put marks on it for decoration in the style of long ago. She made a petticoat and a loose gown, a cap, leggings, and a handkerchief. She put on her father's large old moccasins, which were far too big for her, and went forth to try her luck. She would try, she thought, to discover whether she could see the Invisible One. She did not begin very well. As she set off, her sisters shouted and hooted, hissed and yelled, and tried to make her stay. And the loafers around the village, seeing the strange little creature, called out, "Shame!" The poor little girl, in her strange clothes, with her face all scarred, was an awful sight, but she was kindly received by the sister of the Invisible One. And this was, of course, because this noble lady understood far more about things than simply the mere outside, which all the rest of the world knows. As the brown of the evening sky turned to black, the lady took her down to the lake. "Do you see him?" the Invisible One's sister asked. "I do indeed, and he is wonderful," said Uchigyasku. The sister asked, "And what is his sled string?" The little girl said, "It is the rainbow." "And, my sister, what is his bowstring?" "It is the Spirit's Road, the Milky Way." "So you have seen him," said his sister. She took the girl home with her and bathed her. As she did so, all the scars disappeared from her body. Her hair grew again, and it was combed, long like a blackbird's wing. Her eyes were now like stars. In all the world there was no other such beauty. Then, from her treasures, the lady gave her a wedding garment and adorned her. Then she told Uchigyasku to take the wife's seat in the wigwam, the one next to where the Invisible One sat, beside the entrance. And when he came in, terrible and beautiful, he smiled and said, "So, we are found out." "Yes," said his sister, and so Uchigyasku became his wife.